Hi, Carlos. How you doing?
It's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you as well, man. How you
Uh,
doing?
Good, good. Thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have you here and to share your story with us.
I'm excited to be there.
Yes, and so um, one of the things I would like to share with folks is a bit of your background as an artist. So give me a moment as I just kind of set this up for you right now. Neon, just bear with me 1 second. I've got a little technical issue here to fix.
Oh, no problem, man.
Okay, so I'm gonna read a little bio on you just very quickly before we get into your work and your journey. Um, Alex Neon Tursan was born in Italy. He moved to Munich, Germany in 1974, and as a kid grew up deciding he wanted to be a dancer. So he got an education in classic ballet from 1978 to 91.
Yeah.
He was very good at it, and as a student, he balanced his interest between ballet and painting trains. Uh, and he got engaged as a dancer soloist in various German theaters until 1995. And at the time, he stopped dancing but continued dance projects until 2002. He started writing in 1984, which was his second fascination, graffiti was. And out of the most important experiences of his creative life was visiting New York City in 1988. And that's where he met a lot of the New York City graffiti writers and painted on the famed New York City subway system. And then he moved to Berlin in 1990, where he joined forces with the whole Berlin writing community. So Neon, we've met in Berlin many years ago, and it was quite fascinating because I learned a lot about the important contributions of Germany to the writing culture, not just the
Yeah,
writing culture, but to the dance culture and b-boy culture. But we're going to jump into your story, which kind of, again, this is where these worlds connect. And
absolutely.
so we're going to start from the beginning. As a young man, you were a trained ballet dancer.
Yeah.
And so tell us about this experience. First of all, you were in Munich as a young kid. And tell me, what was it about ballet that it was your chosen artistic expression as a kid?
Well, first, I didn't really choose it. It came to me. Um, as often, I had two sisters, and one of them, she was doing ballet, and I broke my mom's nerves because I was full of energy and always like running around doing stuff and shit. And she was like, "Yo, choose something to do. Go play soccer, football, whatever." But I never really liked those kind of sports, and so she just said, "Okay, join your sister." And so I did, and that was the base. So I had a lot of fun, and they told me I'm a talent and I should proceed, and so I did. Yeah, and step by step, I became a serious professional ballet dancer.
And so tell me about this as a kid, right? Because we're looking at a picture of you. Um, how old were you as a young boy?
With the Miss Piggy right there.
Yes.
Yeah, I was 7 years old.
You're 7 years old. And in the
Yeah.
picture to the right, you're what, 19 years old?
I'm I'm 19. Yeah, around 19 years old. Like 7 years, that's Munich, and 19, that's already Berlin. It's the state school in East Germany.
So let's talk about this because between these two ages, something interesting happens in your world. Hip hop comes into your world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And writing comes into your world. How are you balancing that in your life? One, um, you're being classically trained. and then there's this other world that is a street life.
You cannot balance this. It was full of problems, and the more I did write, the more I was busy in the night, the little energy I had left in the morning to train, you know. I mean, it's up every morning at 10, and your day starts with training, with a workout, and those two things, it was impossible to combine. So I was caught in pretty much pretty troubled time right there. And
in terms of the challenges you were facing, I mean, again, you're trying to fit in with kids who are riding on trains, who are rapping, who are b-boying. Were you a b-boy at all?
Well, first, of course, all of that culture had to spread, you know, because what we had at the beginning was a cliche transported by media, like you can guess, you know. So it took quite a while to orientate and get the whole picture. What you're doing, you know, what did you start doing? And so it was not just like, yeah, start b-boying, because all of these things had to develop first. And yeah, but of course, yeah, I took the whole hip hop package, like it was sold to us by movies like Beat Street and so on, you know, like pretty commercial aspects came first to Europe. And so I lived the cliche, let's say, of b-boying. I never got really deep into it, also because it was forbidden after a while by the ballet school. It was too dangerous. I could have hurt myself and stuff like that. So they recommended us to stop doing that, you know. I still did it, of course, but it faded out. What remained was writing, you know. Writing really hit my heart, really deep.
Right. You started writing at 14, and unbeknownst to you, you started writing one of the most important names in graffiti, Taki. You wrote Taki
Yeah.
179.
Man, I was 14. I couldn't help myself then just pick a name that was right there in some books, you know. And so at least I didn't use it for a long time, maybe half a year. But that was quite enough for me to get the feeling how it is, you know, to get out and tag and be careful, do illegal stuff. You need to orientate, you know. Nobody's taking you by the hand. Maybe it was quite different than New York, you know. You had somebody doing the same stuff. He was older, did it a few years longer, and he took you by the hand and introduced you to the culture. That wasn't the case in Germany. We really had to find out everything on our own. And
so in doing so, Neon, you decided, you know, at about age 17 to become Neon, right, officially. But in
17.
17 rather. So you decided, again, you still have a passion and a love for ballet and performance. Your dream was, you actually worked with some ballet companies.
Oh yeah,
while you were still writing. One of the things you told me that was interesting was that you left Munich to come to Berlin to study. This is about the same time that the wall was coming down.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about this journey you had between and the relationship of graffiti between Munich and Berlin, the difference in writing, the writing you were making in Berlin, and the writing that you were seeing, I mean, in Munich rather, than the writing you were seeing in Berlin.
Mm-hmm. Okay. From my personal thought, you know, and from my personal perspective, the reason why I came to New York to Berlin was to get myself straight again, you know, because I lost it. I have to admit, I kind of lost it. I was like on a brutal trip. I like to rob people, to beat people, to steal. You know, so of course I got caught plenty of times. I had cases dropping on me, and eventually the day came when I realized that I better change my life. I better stop doing that shit, you know. And so the whole street complex thing I decided to let it behind and to concentrate on dance, on ballet. And therefore, I went to Berlin because I've seen the first East Berlin guest dancers in the State Opera in Munich, and I was impressed. Simply impressed by the technical base they had, by the schooling they had. You could simply see they had a better school, period. So I decided to, after I got my degree in Munich, I decided to get to Berlin to have another 1 year of studying East Berlin classic ballet. And I didn't really think to push writing or bombing any further by that time.
But in Munich, you guys were already established, right? Because it was in Munich, some of the notable names of historically of some of the writers you wrote with was Scum and Techno, Don. At that point, how was that for you in terms of you being a writer and part of a crew, following your passion, and kind of, was there any conflict? Obviously some of the acting out was probably some of the conflict you had in yourself, but in terms of the community, how was the community receiving you as a ballet dancer in such a male egotistical space, let's just say? Well,
of course I was the faggot for some, until I fucking punched their face. Then they realized pretty fast, oh no, this guy is using his training also on another level. And so therefore it was full of cliche. What is this guy doing ballet? What is he? It was not usual, simply not usual. And on the other hand, in the ballet world, they were wondering if I'm sane, to risk my health, basically, jumping around on tracks and stuff. I could have easily broke my leg and stuff. And so for them, I was so extreme that they could not understand it. They were sometimes also afraid of me. But my closest friends on both sides, they understood what I'm about, and they like to hear about the stories I told about the other universe I was in. It was like two universes. Like I mentioned before, there was no harmony. I couldn't generate harmony. It's too far away. These two disciplines are too far away from each other.
So
also mentally,
right?
Also mentally, you do style writing. You start bombing to liberate yourself. And a ballet education, you're not free at all. You have to do exactly what they tell you, up to the small finger, like we said. They tell you exactly the positions, and you have to follow the rules. So it was also mentally, it was two totally opposite directions.
But did that discipline? Did either of the disciplines complement themselves in any way?
Yeah.
How so?
Discipline was a common thing. It was. Also, we had the luck to have huge legal spaces in Munich almost from the beginning on. The Flohmarkt, Dachauer Flohmarkt, it was big walls. Maybe you have some in mind where ABC and One and Loomis did their first really big production pieces and stuff. And so this pushed us further to really work on the style aspect so hard, and so disciplined, and not to take it was almost a study, it was not like a game. It was also like a game, but we decided to really put science into it and to understand what we're doing pretty early. So to do that, you need discipline.
It's one of the things that we would admire from the German writers is their discipline, and again, it's part of the German personality, isn't it? Right? This kind of perception, analysis, critique, whereas American writers are very emotional and fluid. It's a very different kind of experience, painting, and even in dance, right? I think we've talked before about a German dancer who I like, Pina Bausch, who was a major influence in contemporary dance, right? She liberated dance in her way, and that influenced the world as well. But another thing I wanted to ask about is, again, the kind of muscle memory and movement and the kind of dance you have with style writing, you know, to me, and I've often discussed this with some b-boys that I know for many years from Rocksteady Crew, from Wiggles and Crazy Legs and Kenny, about the relationship with letters and dance and movement. Did you find that in your world, in your practice?
Yeah, very much. Very much. I take it as I understand it as a fluid dynamic, you know. Also, I like it to compare it to a song or to a jam. Like when you jam, I'm not a musician, but I can imagine that you meet on stage to jam with other people, so you're intuitive, you know. Also in improvisation in dance, which I didn't do as much, but still I had the experience. So you have to let yourself go in order to create a rhythm that is not only you dictating that, you know, but the circumstances, your partners, the mood, the dynamic, the music, stuff like that, you know. So you just let yourself go. And I was able to cultivate it much more when I started to only freestyle the pieces, no more sketches, you know, only freestyle. You don't even know what you do. You go on the wall, blah, 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 you start. And sometimes funny things like the piece here above pop out, you know. It's like, I call that strange fruits, the piece above there, because it looks like a strange fruit to me. But since I don't condemn what I do, and I'm not just like, oh man, look at this looks strange. No, I just take it. And I'm like, oh, okay, but this little part I like. I take this out, and next time I push that further. Forget the rest. It's just a piece. It's just a few hours of enjoying my life, you know. So why take it so serious?
Let me ask you something about Munich, right? Because it's not often mentioned in terms of historical importance, but there are a lot of good writers, important writers like yourself and Lumit and Don that have come out of there. When you came to Berlin, were they receptive to you as a Munich writer? Were they territorial?
Yeah, much more territorial than Munich. Berlin had more like Munich is like a big village, okay. It has also that village kind of a style, you know. Everything is like smaller, slower, and Berlin has this metropolis thing since ever. And while in Munich we were more listening to the East Coast rap MCing stuff. Berlin was more to the West Coast, you know, with the aggressive music, with all the gangster stuff, and therefore the mood was much more aggressive and competitive, you know, when I came to Berlin to live here, 90. But I've been here before. That was 85, with like a school trip that we had with Don. We were in the same class, and this was the night where we sneaked out of the hostel and bombed the first Berlin U-Bahn subway, you know, and that's an accepted fact by everybody.
So you guys were the first to paint the trains?
Yeah, we two guys from Munich, we were the first to paint Berlin subway. Berlin was a little late, like Italy, like you can say. Italy was 5-6 years beyond Germany or Switzerland and stuff, but when it hit, they really hit hard, you know.
Why is that? Why did it take writers from Munich to initiate that?
No, I wouldn't say we initiated that. You know, we just did the first train. The scene was there. I guess my theory is because it's just my theory. I started writing because I was under tremendous pressure, so by society. You know, I couldn't understand plenty of things, so I needed a ventile. I needed something to do against society, but also something that makes sense, like a rebellion. You know, 14 years, come on. So I choose the style writing, which I'm very happy. And Berlin, I think the need to rebel was much less, because it was since ever a fucking freaky city. Freaky city. You could party every day and stuff, you know, and that was basically totally different to Munich. So the pressure of rebellion or of doing something alternative wasn't that high in Berlin. This is my explanation. But still, you know, after a few years, they really kept up, and they superated Munich and almost, yeah, all the other German cities got swept.
And
besides Berlin.
You made a pilgrimage to New York.
Oh yeah.
And that was huge. That was a really big thing for you. And also for European writers, because not many at that point, not many European writers came to New York. I believe Chucky from England, even though that's not Europe, he's one of the writers I took to the One Tunnel in, I believe it was 1985.
Okay.
So he was an early writer. But
yeah.
What was your experience? Like, why did you come to New York to paint trains? What did you gain from that?
Of course. The first goal was to paint trains, of course. But how you say the overall motivation to go to New York, to the Mecca, so to say, was that I ran out of information, and that was a pre-internet time, pre-mobile phone time. You know, we still wrote letters with printed photos in it. You know.
Who were you communicating with in America?
Cento.
Cento, and who else?
Basically Cento.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you come to New York.
Yeah.
And
I come to New York. I have two phone numbers that Milk gave me. Milk had like a school exchange for 1 year, and he ended up in Philadelphia, which allowed him to come to New York pretty often, to take flicks of the trains and to spot around and stuff. And this on this occasion he met Clark and Disk. I think they're from Brooklyn. So first thing I did when I arrived to New York, same day, fuck jet lag. I was young, I was 17. I called those guys up. And so I went to Brooklyn, painted with them, handball court, and they gave me the tip to check the 238th Street in the Bronx. This is where I went just the next day, and started to paint on my own. Totally naive. Plenty of times I could have been hurt or killed or.
And how was your English? How did you navigate the language barrier?
School English. Learning by doing. Being brave, just open your mouth and blah, 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 communicate. And only once that failed. That was when I was smoking a blunt with those guys in down there, 238th Street, and my brain just went click, and I couldn't speak one English word, and I felt kind of, oh shit, in the middle of the Bronx, not able to talk, to communicate, so it was pretty hard. It was pretty strong weed, though. And
but you came in, and how long did you stay? Because it seems like you did quite a few productions, like this top to bottom. With Damp. You've done a couple pieces with Damp. Yeah,
we were like partners. When I came to New York, I also stayed at his place, and when he came to Munich later on, he of course he stayed at my crib, and so I relate to him on him, and
I mean,
he took me to the trains also, you know. I was begging, oh, please take me to the trains. And he was like very, very, very careful, of course. He was super up by that time, and also he had to watch his back, you know. So he could not afford to take some idiot, 17-year-old idiot from Europe to the trains and maybe getting busted because of an unknown guy, you know. So he checked me out first, like I would have done the same, you know. And after a while, we did the 2-3 walls together, hung out, you know. Got to know each other a little bit, and one day he was just like, "Yo, you ready, man? Let's go to the trains." And I was like, "Yeah."
But you were already painting trains in Europe, so you already seasoned for this. I would imagine it was a lot easier to paint trains in Europe than New York.
Well, Europe, you know, Munich. I painted trains in Munich by that time, and it wasn't really hard. So you can't compare it. But New York is, of course, a totally different vibe and stuff. And in the end, it was more difficult in New York because in Munich we had no fence with barbed wire to climb or stuff like that, or no tunnels really, you know, with the third rail and blah blah blah. And plus I was like really I was nervous, you know. That's New York. That's not village, you know. That was the Mecca. That was wow, man. And it was also the Americanism that I had back then, you know. I was eating fast food like an idiot and stuff, and being like, yeah, skyscrapers. So living the cliche. And
weren't your parents concerned?
My mom, yeah, she was. And now that I have a daughter, you know, I totally understand her. My daughter is much more reasonable than I ever was. And last year she went to Paris alone, and I was really like super afraid. And she was there to study, not to bomb trains. So my poor mom, yes, she was afraid, but she also knew there's no way to control me. So if I want to do something, I'm going to do it.
So
period.
You're in New York, you meet some of the top writers. What did you gain from being in New York that you didn't get in terms of style writing, right? The aesthetic of New York style. What did you gain from your experience here in the US?
Let's say that was my real initiation into that game. Before that, that was just like, before that, it was just playing around in the sandbox, not really knowing what I do. It feels great. I just do it. Feels even greater. I continue doing it. But in New York, you know, I was initiated. I understood much more about the depth, you know, the depth of the culture, the Tiefe, how you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the history, of course. I didn't know names that were totally known to you, you know, because we were conducted by mass media, subway art, okay? I knew the names in subway art. That was it. And in Style Wars and stuff like that. It's more or less the same names. And, but all the old school, the 70s, the beginning of the 80s and stuff, I had no clue. So, Santo once, he gave me a sightseeing, telling me, let's go to the tunnels though, but not to paint. I'm going to take you around and show you really old tags and really old throw-ups. And I'm going to explain you something about these dudes and what they did, if they're still around or not, and stuff like that. And I was like smashed. We had a walk the whole night, and he explained me so many things, like Part, you know, Part 1, never heard about Part. Incredibly. Well, that's another topic, why he didn't end up in certain books, you know, because he definitely deserves it. But that's another thing. But I was just like, wow, man, Part 1. Oh, and he just retired. Okay, man. Oh, crazy. And decades later, we paint together walls, you know. So that's like
amazing.
Universe is coming together on a holistic level that it's worth to talk about spirituality at a certain point, you know, because this thing is not just about being the king, being the best. This is for children. This is not for grown-up men. I'm not interested to be king, to be all up, to be blah, 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 blah. I don't care about that, you know. I'm 50 years old. I can't afford to waste my time with superficial shit like this. I want to
Right.
go into the deep
So,
things.
so now that you
Like,
say that you're concerned with grown-up issues as an artist, you take your art for change, right? You use art as a vehicle to see the world and to give back to the world. And this, at this point, the image we're looking at is that you're in Africa, in Senegal, painting.
yeah,
What
yeah.
brought you to Senegal?
The movie Whole Train that we did. We did a movie, pretty bombastic movie called Whole Train. It was like docu drama about the crew, blah blah blah, growing up, bombing trains, and so on and so on. And the Goethe Institute wanted the producer to do a workshop about movie stuff, you know, how to do movies. But he was like, no, not a good idea. But it would be good if you take Neon down there, and he's doing workshops about style writing, you know. And since you have a scene already in Dakar, why not? So they invited me to go there. I went there 6 weeks, I guess. I had around 1,000 cans with me. And we organized a big workshop with plenty of walls to paint and stuff like that, you know. So I bumped into the Senegalese scene, hip hop scene, which is vivid and big, and yeah, tons of fun, incredibly, and also culturally seen, you know, it's totally different in Africa than in any other continent I've been. And sometimes you think, oh wow, man, this must turn them like to be interested in some certain topics and stuff, but they're like, no, I'm not like, no, I'm more interested in stopping the action and pray a little bit, because it's Muslimic, you know, and the whole city stops and everybody prays.
Yeah.
And the interesting fact was that to really get close to them, you know, to have a trusted relationship with different cultures, I reached that after I was like, I meditate. I like to meditate, and I was wondering often in the Western world, what would happen if you just stop in the street and meditate? People probably would think, this guy's crazy, this guy's mad, he has a mental problem or whatever, or he wants to show off, you know. But being in Senegal, witnessing those people praying 5 times a day, and once I was like, okay, they do pray, I sit next to them and meditate. And that was the key to those hearts of those people. And then painting was like the dot on the I, you know. It was just like, even you could really melt together because of not because of painting, not because of but another common thing, you know, belief, or at least meditation, being spiritual.
Right, and culture as well. So one of the things, I think that's always been the benefit for graffiti writers, that the art itself became a passport into the world, but not just the world and its customs, right? And this is part of what you're talking about, you know, developing and adapting to society and enjoying and appreciating it. Another place you went to was Brazil. And yesterday we had Os Gêmeos on, and we were talking at length about Brazil and the graffiti culture there. What brought you to Brazil?
It was the preparation for a project that we did, or like Don Stone did, Cuba, Brazil. This guy was working his ass off, and he had like a few thousand euros by the side, and instead of buying himself an apartment or a car or whatever, he decided to put up this project, Cuba, Brazil. And the idea was to connect Brazil painting culture to Cuban painting culture, and also bring German people there to realize the whole stuff. And on the way to organize all of that stuff, you know, we ended up in Brazil in the jungle. And yeah.
The book was amazing, and you got to paint with those gemios while you were there as well.
Yeah. We also we lived their home and stuff, and they took us around, and then I realized, man, it's incredible because they really know their way around, man. It's super professional, incredible. They
Nice.
wow.
And then, of course, you go to Cuba. That must
Cuba.
have been really amazing. How much time did you spend in Cuba?
I've been there 2005, 2006, 2007. 2005, it was just pretty quick decision to go there, so I had only 3 weeks, which totally rushed my mind. You know, it was crazy. It was incredible. I lost my heart there, to be sincere. And then the next years, the second year, I was there almost 3 months, so 2 months something.
Yeah.
Which allowed me to really spread my roots into that island, you know, and to get to know people more intense. And then we were invited also to take part of the Biennale, so we had also another aspect to have an exhibition with Gemeos as well.
So one of the things that I notice about your work in Brazil, it's becoming more and more abstract. It's leaving the formality of style writing in the way that we've known it before. What's inspiring you to move away from the tradition of style writing?
That style was developed by Chemnos, by Scum in the first place. But since we were close partners and good friends, he influenced me, and we worked it off together after a certain point. And but he also to find out about this fluidity in style and stuff, and all the camouflage and stuff. He was inspired by Faith a lot, and so this breaking down to the core of the letter and put it together in an abstract way was influenced by Faith at the beginning.
Yeah, Phase two was really kind of into this whole camouflaging, heavy camouflaging of the letter form.
Heavy, yeah.
So in Cuba, were you doing this style in before you got to Cuba? Because it's interesting, you have that style in Cuba, and then you have this style, this train you painted with those gemios, which goes back to a very formal style.
Yeah, like the very classic.
Those gemios is online. They say hello.
Hey, yo, how you doing? Cool, man.
So I love this, again, this transcontinental experience you're having with graffiti and style writing, but also that you're allowing yourself to grow in many different areas as an artist and as a man.
Yes, let me compare it to like the classic wild style right there on the train. This is like a bass line, you know. This is like a bass line. You go like ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. So it's like, you know, and the rest is like like the bone style, like we called it. And maybe I explain on bone style. This is because you construct the letter as like you have a skeleton in mind, like a bone construction, you know. And around the bones, if you first laid out the more or less how you want the letter to look by laying the bones out, you know, then you put the flesh around it, and the flesh does not just grow around the bones, but it also connects itself to from the first to the last letter, and it grows through the E, through the O, and it makes a little loop and comes back and stuff. And this is like this is not a bass line. This is like jamming with saxophone and stuff on stage with different people, you know. So this is much more, I get loose, you know. For me, not the most important, but one of the important thing is that in the end, if somebody is like, wow, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, yeah, man, that's my name, blah, blah, blah. Oh, show me. And then I show him the O, the P. It's not my name. That says opium. But if you look closely, you see the O, the P. It's very simple because you just lay the bone and then the flesh grows around. If you take the flesh away, you see this, the letter, the construction, very, very easy, very simple.
There's a lot going on here with optical illusions about transparency, line movement, wireframing, and even 3D. You know, this is one of the things that I admired about the work that you and Scum were doing. And it was first brought to my attention around '96, I think, in Los Angeles by Brett Webb from Art Crimes. He had a bunch of drawings. And he said, "Mayor, look at this style. This is amazing." And I was like, wow, this is super advanced. And of course, it was coming from Germany at the time. And I appreciated it a great deal because it was breaking convention of all the things that we were kind of doing. Even though some of us were already exploring some of these ideas.
Again, of course.
There was something more technically more technical commitment in the work in these line drawings that I was witnessing. And of course, you know, one of the things too that was really quite impressive, again, goes back to how you guys were thinking about volume, the letter, you know, let's just say drawing in space, volumetric letters and things like that.
Yeah, true. We had like, you know, we had the privilege, I would say, to take a culture over that was already worked out. Everything that is relevant to the culture already existed when we took it over. So we had the privilege to push it further and not to set the base, because the base was set already by you guys, which is an incredible work that you accomplish, plus the social situation back then, which probably goes hand in hand, because again, then this rebellion thought comes into mind, you know, the worse the condition around you, the more you need to fight and rebel and show you there, you know, don't forget me, motherfuckers, I'm there too.
Yeah.
And
but
then
Neon, can I tell you something? That when I was in Germany, in Berlin, I understood why this culture fits perfectly into that society. One, because of its history, but also the infrastructure, the way the city is built, the train system, you know, its history in music and in culture. But also, you know, there are ghettos there. You know, there are poor communities. There's strife. So there is something that I found in spirit there that made sense in terms of how you would adapt this culture.
It's multi-ethnic too, you know.
Multi-ethnic,
much more
absolutely.
Than,
thank you for saying that.
Yeah, much more than Munich. And
so all this to say, you know, what's so now you are miles away at this point from ballet. You're committed as an artist.
I would break my bones jumping in the air, landing. I would be dead. No, I'm in martial art now.
Yeah, and so you started considering at a certain point, because everybody was showing in galleries and museums, that was something you were going to pursue. And how often did you go to the studio to practice painting on canvas? Was that something you took seriously?
It took a while to take it serious. It took a while because my credo was I did not start writing to reduce myself again to a certain space, but I always wanted to break out of the space, you know, paint as big as possible. And even if you look at the canvas, you know, it's still the old habit, you know, I have to fill the whole canvas with the style. Maybe I should work on it just to have another facet on the whole stuff, you know.
Yeah. Well, breaking out of it, again, this is one of the things that really, I was so impressed when I first saw you at the studio and saw your sculptures.
Oh, yeah.
that you really broke out of this, you know, the flat space and into reliefs and in graffiti in the round. And I think that's something that was already baked into your work. You were already suggesting that in the paintings that you were, you know, you were practicing. You know, and I saw it in the drawings, like I mentioned when I first saw them many years ago. Tell me about this, about the 3D style painting, and then bringing that to sculpture.
It started in the 90s when, let's use a few prominent names, Delta, Scum, Dime, Lumit, you know. At a certain point, they all realized, you know, we can make it look three-dimensional, a little bit like MC Escher, M.C. Escher, that guy. And we can bring that to the letters by allowing the 3D to be not just a 3D, but an active part of the letter itself. So we can twist it, and this is a totally different idea from the classic 3D or shadow or whatever. So by having that point, it was just a little jump only to put it into the real three-dimensional world, because it was almost there anyway, you know. So it was a two-dimension illusion of the third dimension, but it already opened the mind and the understanding for let's construct a fucking house, a style house, or whatever, you know. Let's take it out of the wall or the piece of paper, sheet of paper.
Hold that thought for me, because it is true. It is, if I go back, you know, this is again, and I'm, you know, embellishing right now, but it's like Michelangelo looking at a piece of marble and saying, I see my masterpiece in here. Yeah. You don't see it. You're seeing a block with just a drawing on the surface, or a painting on the surface, right? But it's to carve that out, right? You carving it out with paint, but then again, and in this instance, you're carving it out of styrofoam.
Yeah. As we know, there is different ways to build, or you build up, or you take off. You know, like what I do is I take material off. You know, I have like a block, and I start cutting stuff away till I have the shape that I want. And of course, you can also start from zero and build up. You know, it's a totally different method to work. But I was again, that was like a little fate also, because when I stopped dancing actively, I was still involved in the theater company stuff, you know. And so my free time, I used to get up to the workspaces, to the workshops of stage designer. And I had a few friends up there, you know. And so I asked them, how do you build the columns? How do you build those stones or whatever laying on the stage, you know? You have to remove them quickly. They cannot be too heavy and stuff. And they were like, yeah, it's all styrofoam. And I was like, fuck, okay, cool. Show me how it works. And so they introduced me to the technique. I shared my studio place with one guy back then. And of course, I was profiting a lot. You know, I profited so much by just looking what he was doing and copying it, you know, and bringing it into the style writing world. Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting because these pieces, this letter N that we're looking at, what year was this?
Oof, I'm so bad with such things. I'm bad with names, which is pretty shitty for a writer, and I'm bad with dates. But I think this is 2003. When was the back jump we met? The exhibition.
Was that 2000? No, it wasn't 2006. I don't remember.
Difficult to remember.
Yeah.
Around this time, 2003, 4, 5. This is a reproductive thing that I did for the first time. So I had a mold, I worked the positive. I put the stuff around it, you know. I took it off, then I had the mold, and into this mold I could put whatever. In this kind, this is resin. But I did the same piece with concrete, which is my favorite because it's so yes, man, such a good feeling to see and touch that concrete leather.
But you also
And
put them on the street a couple times, and this is what I really liked. In Germany, the only other person I've seen put graffiti sculpture on the street was Akeem Machine.
him, and for a short period of time also Zest.
Zast, yes, he's another one. Zast, correct. Thank
Zast,
you.
Zast, excuse me, Zast
Zast,
from Berlin.
yes.
They hung out together with Akeem and stuff, so they were influenced by each other. And yeah, I didn't put so many up illegal in the street because it's too much work. I don't like to take a straight piece of styrofoam, glue it to another straight piece of styrofoam. I think for me that's boring. I like to work with convex, concave, and overlapping stuff and shit, you know. And
Right.
that's simply too much work to. I wouldn't say to waste it on the street, but you know.
I'll tell you this, people, since when I started making sculptures way back in the day, everybody thought that I was going to be putting them on the street, and I was like, no, they're too valuable. Even as far back as 1985, 86, I was like, no way, I need to keep these. These are important, and people will steal them, and God knows what, you know, if they'll become valuable or not. But you're right, when you get really invested in your work, it's a challenge to say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice this. Especially when you've been sacrificing, painting all those trains in Munich and in Berlin and so on. So this picture with you and J1, this is where we connected at the Back Jumps exhibition, and you did the installation with the Cuba Brazil installation with Don, and this neon, this what people. Yeah, and this neon piece is in the round. If I could just show another slide that gives you an idea of how you're working, and it's almost architectural, isn't it?
Yeah, especially this piece is pretty architectural, yeah. And since I have the virtual reality glasses and stuff, and I started to work with this stuff a little bit. What you can see right now, this was my first freestyle 3D sculpture. So I had no plan. I just knew more or less what I want to do. And I was like, you know, working myself forward just a little bit, and I was looking, okay, that looks cool. And so this is my first style I did without having really a plan into the 3Ds. And I was really excited to do that because I did not know what comes up. You know, especially if you work by cutting things off, you know, that means if you cut something off too fast, it's gone. You cannot replace it. I mean, you can, but it's very tricky, and it's two different materials, and then it comes down to problems and stuff. So you need to be maximum concentrated, not to do the wrong stuff, and still being loose. And in order to be creative, you know, you cannot be full of afraid of doing something wrong.
This is amazing, you know, these pieces. And, you know, mind you, I mean, there's a lot of good sculptors out there now, and people think, oh, they're the first ones to do it, whether it's PETA or all these other kids. And there are some really wonderful, there's some wonderful guys out there who are doing styrofoam sculptures now. I think it's Ezra. And I'm happy to see that it's finally, you know, taking its course, and people are recognizing the opportunity of turning letters into physical form, right? Because then you'll actually get to a place where you'll discover a whole nother type of sculpture and abstraction in sculpture, right? Whether it's volumetric or not, or if it's relief. These sculptures, I mean, to me, this stuff is reminiscent of some of the stuff that, you know, Ernie from New York, he's been developing the 3D painting style since the 90s. And there's always been this kind of debate whether who did what first in terms of 3D style. And again, he pioneered painting in a certain way, but I always turn back to the old days of like Flint and Pistol, some of those guys that were doing it in the 70s and alluding to it, which was kind of genius. But again, they were nowhere near as successful as in terms interpreting it in the way that you guys have been.
Give those guys Montana Gold with the soft cap, you see? And they did those pieces with stop caps, right, back then?
Yeah.
Wow, fucking wow. You know, so what is also very important to mention is the technical difference on the tools that you can use in the 90s or now 2020 compared to what you had in the 70s or in the beginning of the 80s. You know, totally different stuff, totally different.
It's a world of difference. So Neon, we have three. We've been talking, so I told you this goes back so fast, and we've been talking and covering a lot of ground. And
wow.
In the last few minute or so, if anybody has a question, please submit it. But also, if you have any shout outs, anything to add, please.
Yeah. One of my, for me personally, my most important concerns is to let go this competition shit. Like I have a quote on my IG account that says, competition is for horses, not for artists. We need to collaborate. We need to learn from each other, not just in art, but art has always been a free space. You know, you can do no limits at all.
But
so this is important for society to understand.
Can I add to that? Because it's in the nature of a writer, graffiti writer, to be competitive. I'm competitive that way. I'm competitive with ideas because it fuels it, but it goes back because I'm adding and learning from somebody and I'm motivated by somebody. I don't think it's an ego thing as much. I compete with history. You've often probably heard me say, look, I'm competing with the constructivists or the futurists. But I get
historically seen, it may be important who was the first and who was not, because you try to understand, to recapitulate how was what, blah blah blah. But in a direct exchange with somebody in front of you, you should let go all of these "I'm better than you" stuff, because in my eyes, at least, it's not about this. Learning, yes. Friendly competition, yes. But at the end of the day, if I have a nice day with somebody, I go paint with toys. I don't care. If you're a friend of mine, I want to have a nice time. So why not? And I also, if somebody burns me, fuck man, he burns me. Like, you're not unbeatable. So what's that, Me personally, I don't want to waste my time with such. So
in the last minute, what's ahead for you? What's in front of you?
Especially nowadays, it's very hard to say, right?
Isn't that the truth?
Yes, because what happened the last month flipped everything upside down, right? So I don't really know what's going
Are you spending time in the studio?
Yes, a lot, but in the same time, I built your arc, right? Those green.
Yeah.
Let's build the arc.
Shout out to Dose Green. Build your arc.
Big shout out, yes. And the arc is, of course, not the physical one.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I can do that in the studio as well too, But
I appreciate you. So listen, I'm going to sign off. But before I do, I want to thank you on behalf of the Museum of Graffiti and our team for sharing your story, your journey, your art, your kindness with us. And I hope you stay safe and productive.
And I want to say thank you also for having me, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. And